happen in the courts. And when you challenge them, what are you coming up against? A system completely controlled by a handful of legislators. And guess what? They win. They win every time. Until we decide to fix that, here's what I'm going to tell you, and this is the blunt part, as if the first part was soft-pedaled, right? That's what you're thinking. Well, gosh, she's been so gentle up until now. All right, so here's the blunt part. Putting energy in Washington, D.C. is going to do very little to change your day-to-day life in South Carolina. The truth of the matter is, folks, that Congress doesn't decide, really, whether to accept and spend federal dollars. Who does that? You better believe it. They're the ones who have enslaved you in Washington, D.C. More than 1/3 of state government is controlled by Washington dollars. More than 1/3. Think those come with any regulations? Who are you blaming for all the regulations in the state of South Carolina because of federal money? Whose fault is that? It's not Barack Obama's, folks. It is your state legislature's fault. That's whose fault it is. Everything goes through the state of South Carolina. Now, before I tell you how we think this needs to be fixed, I want to convince you for a minute that it needs to be fixed and that you should care enough to fix it. To me, it comes down to a very simple principle, and that is freedom. That's not just a demagogic word. Our founders worked very hard to create a system in which human freedom was the most important protected quality. It was a mission statement in so many ways. You live in a state that has the most controlling, least accountable politicians in the country. That's not an outrageous statement. Do you think any other state has a budget and control board instead of letting the governor run it? You know how the Senate Finance Chairman has power over 1/5 of state government? By virtue of seniority and alphabetical order. Who holds him accountable for his votes on the Budget and Control Board? Handful of people in Florence. These guys are making statewide decisions. They're not just making decisions for their constituents, are they? They're making decisions for all of you, and you can't vote for them. And I don't want to hear a single legislator come up here and say, well, what, you want to give all that power to the governor? Well, let's assess that for a minute. Who has it now? 3 people you can't vote for. Behind closed doors. Who has the power now? So, if the governor actually can control state government, crazy idea that our founders had, this whole separation of powers. You want to know my favorite reason for not letting the governor actually run state government? It was offered by Dick Harpootlian. Now, I've heard some good ones, by the way, but this one was brilliant. Well, South Carolinians just don't want a king. We don't want a king. We mistrust a king. We don't want a tyrant. So we have our power diffused among the people's representatives. That's right, because you know what I bet they said back in the day? Okay, no, we don't want to hold the governor whom we all elect responsible for running the state. That would be a terrible idea. What we want to go ahead and do is give all the power to 3 people nobody can vote for except a handful. That's the way to run a government. Do you guys remember? I bet, yeah, something tells me that was not the battle cry. So, what else do you call a government like this? It is corrupt. It is corrupt. It is corrupt. And the abuse of power in that state house is like nothing anywhere else. Here's the difference between what happens in Columbia and what happens in other states. It's all perfectly legal. Why? Why is everything they do perfectly legal? Because they make the laws, they control the judicial branch, and of course they run state government. So, they police themselves, they hide their sources of income, They exempt themselves in the legislature from freedom of information, so you can't get to their correspondence. They have billion-dollar backroom deals that they protect. What do you think? Now, I guess my challenge to you, and I'm very serious about this, I want to know. We all need to know. Because we're out there, and we're not going to shut up again. But my question to you is, do you want to live in the freest state in America? Do you?
See.
Really? Well, hard to say right now. Not many of them. But how about if you decided that you want South Carolina to be the freest state in America? Okay, in all seriousness though, most of you are out there and you're thinking, yeah, that sounds good. But here's what worries me. We don't set very high standards for ourselves. We don't seem to think it's worth it to demand that we live in the freest state in the country. We don't ask very much of our politicians. We treat them like celebrities instead of employees, don't we?
Hell, I'm going to give you the time of day.
There you go.
And who works for who?
Precisely. But taxes are higher. More, companies are exempt from paying taxes than we collect. You're paying the bill. The budget every year is the largest in state history. We're more dependent every year on Washington, D.C. So my question, again, really, do you want to live in the freest state in America?
Yeah.
Or not? Or do you just kind of want to do this? Because you know what? We're not ever going to be anything but poor. We're not ever going to be anything but undereducated. And I am tired of hearing politicians talk about how great it is to create jobs. You know what? A, they don't create jobs except for themselves and a bunch of lobbyists and consultants and lawyers, and that's a fact. Those are the jobs they're creating. More and more of them every year. More importantly, since when did our dream become about a job? When did we settle for that instead of greatness? Neil Armstrong died, I thought, oh, we've lost another piece of greatness. We don't think that way anymore. We don't believe we're capable of it. We don't believe our leaders will let us have it, and we believe that we ought to compromise with them on it. I'm here to tell you, we should not compromise one bit, and that means politicians do not get to define either ethics or reform. You do. You decide what you want. You decide what it looks like to claim victory for giving back freedom. You get to decide that. Now we have done a lot of research over the years into what that looks like. And it looks like some tough stuff. I'm not going to stand up here and tell you I have an easy Band-Aid, but when Governor Haley and our Attorney General, nice guy, but when they took to the state and said, we've got ethics reform proposals, and then Speaker Harrell came out and said, oh no, we've got ethics reform proposals, and then you heard Senate leaders say, no, we're going to do it. Well, that's when a few of us said, no, you know what, you're not. You're not. And we got a coalition together. Talbert was there. Harry Kibler was there. So too was Dana Beach of the Coastal Conservation League, along with civil rights activist Bill Saunders, 77-year-old civil rights activist. One voice. Give us back control of our government. No compromises. No compromises. Since when do they get to decide what control of government ought to look like? So, I'm going to tell you how we can get there. We're going to have to tear down the barriers to freedom. We're not going to propose alternatives to health care. We're going to propose how to tear down barriers to free market health care system in this state. So, to get to those things that you want, lower taxes, real education opportunity, equality of economic opportunity, to get to those places, you have to go through one really big, expensive, well-funded brick wall. And that's the Columbia Complex, the State House Empire. So you want to tear it down?
Yeah.
Here's how it's going to